I drummed so much my drawer opened up. Welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. There's going to be fireworks on today's show. I should forewarn people right now. Mar-A-Lago Club, obviously everything going on with Trump. Unfortunately, Olivie Newton-John passed. It's a club. If you Google it, it's the Mar-A-Lago Club. You didn't know that. It's like a club.
I thought it was his residence.
No, like if you look it up, I think it's like a club, Mar-A-Lago. Palm Beach, Florida.
Is there a club called Mar-A-Lago?
In Palm Beach, Florida.
But it's where he lives.
What's that? Yeah, I mean he stays there from time to time. He's a resident.
All right, whatever. I never heard it called a club. I just heard it called Mar-A-Lago.
It's like how the buses, like at the Staples Center, they had like the club underneath. Like for a time being, like the buses, like Bus lived at the Staples Center for a time being. Like it was his residence.
Who?
Like Bus, Dr. Bus, who owned the
Jerry
Lakers.
Bus.
Jerry Bus.
Oh, okay.
For a time, he lived at the Staples Center.
Oh, they had
so it was his residency because like it was just cheaper and taxes. And
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
So same thing with like the Mar-A-Lago Club.
I just like Camp David. I just told it called Camp David. I thought it was Mar-A-Lago. I didn't think the word club went with it, so that threw me off. Go ahead. Next.
Olivie Newton-John passed away. We want to talk about the Gladwell stuff, work from home, because it's not very often that we get to say we think Malcolm Gladwell is wrong. I think Malcolm Gladwell is wrong. He's one of my.
He's not actors. Totally right. Yeah. There's points that he's off base.
And then depending on how much time we have, we always seem to run out of it. Brittney Griner. I could talk about Brittney Griner for an hour. I don't understand.
Brittany Griner is going to be to us what Matt Damon was to whatever show that they were always ran out of time that they couldn't
Jimmy
have Matt
Kimmel.
Damon on. Yeah.
We want to thank. Sorry to Brittany Griner that we didn't have enough time. It's possible.
Yeah.
So we'll start there first before we get to all this stuff because again there are going to be fireworks on today's show. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Yeah. I'm obviously I don't know, life, and you just don't get it.
Well, tell people what you did to me first about my drink, so people know the type of person that the good and the bad of Mark Messina.
Well, first, I was a little frazzled because I showed up and I did have a text from you,
yes,
which is weird because I usually see texts immediately. You are the one who sometimes responds to texts like hours or days later.
Days.
You texted me before I got, because I texted you and told you about what time I was going to get here because I had meetings in the morning. And you said on your way in if you could bring some caffeine. And I showed up with caffeine for myself and didn't check my phone until I sat down. I was like, oh, you wanted some too.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't going to drink mine until later. So I said, I have a vanilla Coke in the fridge if you want it. And you're like, ooh, that might be good. Well, then you got me into this heated debate. And I just needed a little. So I cracked it open. And then right before we went on the air, you're like, all right, I'll take that vanilla Coke. I said, I just drank half of it. So then, in typical fashion, I said, I'll go get you one. And you're like, no, don't go get me one.
Yeah.
And I said, but I feel bad.
Yeah.
And you said, don't go because you feel bad. Go because it's the right thing to do. Right. How passive-aggressive is that?
Passive-aggressive, it's true. It's
so
honest.
20 seconds after you tell me don't go get one, then you turn around and say, well, if you don't get me one, then you'll be in the wrong because it's the right thing to do to go get me one. So I went and got you one.
My girlfriend's going to kill me for telling you this, but my girlfriend and I have this
She's
thing.
going to kill you sooner or later anyway.
We have this thing where I will, I told you before, we're good arguers. We're not the quiet walk around, tiptoe around each other type. We are the let's air it out and get it done.
I will say that I cannot see her being the quiet tiptoe around anything.
No. So there's times where I do happen to be right when we are arguing.
Just by happenstance.
On those rare lucky occasions, she will look at me and she'll be like, well, I'm sorry. And I will sometimes say to her, and this drives her nuts, but I will be like, but you're not. So don't just tell me you're sorry when you're not actually sorry. And here's the best part is sometimes she'll be like, yeah, you're right. So again, I knew you weren't actually sorry about the soda. Not truly sorry.
I wasn't. I felt bad. I felt bad.
It's so bad you were going to sit there and drink the rest of it. That's not the...
What? Did you want the one that I already started?
That's not the point I'm making.
I'll give you that one.
I'm just saying you felt so bad you were going to sit there and just keep drinking the soda that you had offered me before.
No, but there's a level of disingenuousness to say, no, it's cool, I don't need it. And then to turn around and say, well, you should give me one if it's the right thing to do.
Was it not? Do you disagree
then
that it was the
then
right
don't
thing
say,
to
don't
do?
get, when I offer and say I'll go get you one, then just say, oh, that would be great. Here, hold off. Oh, here's money, or just say something other than no, don't. But it's the right thing to do.
You offered me a soda.
I know.
You're acting as if I somehow created this and
Well,
I
then-
did nothing. I feel like Chris Rock and you're Will Smith.
Chris,
That's how I feel right now.
whoa.
I was just telling jokes
Listen,
and minding my own business.
I might go all Will Smith on you here in a minute. Let me finish my drink first.
The Mar-A-Lago Club, let's start here because I Googled it real quick after you said that. It is a resort, National Historic Landmark in Palm Beach, Florida, built from 1924 to 1927 by breakfast cereal company heiress and socialite Marjorie Merriweather Post. I'm sure
You know who she is, by the way?
What's that?
Post cereal.
No, who's that?
Marjorie Post.
Okay.
Her
yeah.
dad. I saw
I'm
now.
linking it together now.
This is a stupid little side note because I saw this on Foods That Changed America or something. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
Her dad, her husband, somebody, because it was very unique for a woman to be that powerful back then. In the what year did it say? 1927.
It was built from 24 to 27.
Okay, it was very odd at the turn of that century for a woman. Whoever it was in the family committed suicide.
Okay.
So she took over and took it to like new realms. Like she was an incredibly talented businesswoman.
Okay.
And I remember when watching it, because I watched it, I'm sure I saw this documentary type thing during the Trump administration because she was the one who had it built. So yes, that was your little history lesson on the side. Here, I'll tell you what, one of the things that made her brilliant.
Okay.
She, they're Bird's Eye food.
Okay.
The guy who, the frozen foods of Bird's Eye.
Sure.
His last name was Bird's Eye. That's who he named it after himself.
Okay.
He was the first guy that figured out how to freeze vegetables like successfully.
Okay.
The problem was they couldn't keep them frozen because grocery stores didn't have freezers. So she bought the company, kept him on, and then went around all these grocery stores and said, we will give you the freezer. You only put our product in it. And that was it's one of the reasons that she became uber successful. But yes, anyway, I digress.
So now it's owned by basically Trump Hotels, essentially. I believe it's Trump International Realty is who actually owns it.
But isn't it just one resident? Isn't it just like a big mansion?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've heard before. It's called the Crown Jewel of Palm Beach. Have you ever heard that referred to?
I believe it.
Yes. So I believe it's just like one larger residency club, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's a club.
It's a house.
It's like Hugh Hefner when he had the
mansion, the Playboy mansion.
It's like the mansion, the club. Like it's the no, it's not like that. I feel like it's
I
like
guess
that.
I do know what you say that the Blue Jays have a hotel.
Yeah.
Next, Roberto Alomar lived at the stadium
Yes.
for years.
Yeah.
Maybe his whole time he was a Blue Jay.
Yeah.
And he just took the elevator down when he went to work, and then that was it.
Well, Dr. Buss for the Lakers had no choice. He was broke.
Because he was broke.
He was divorced, broke.
I haven't watched all of that yet. There will be a time. It seems fantastic.
The show.
What's it called?
Winning
Showtime?
Time?
What's it called?
It was going to be called Showtime.
Winning Time.
It's called Winning Time. They switched it
because of copyright.
The competitor, Showtime. They were allowed to call it Showtime.
But HBO didn't want to promote their competitor.
Do we really want one of our primetime shows to be called the name of our competitor? And then they decided to call it Winning Time.
Did you watch it all?
Almost. I have 2 more episodes to go.
Okay.
So
I've seen probably 2 or 3 in parts. It's great.
Fun. I mean, it's exaggerated and it's a little cartoonish, but I really enjoy it. Really, really good. The FBI searched former President Donald Trump's residence at his Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida on Monday. According to the New York Times, the search appears to be focused on material, including many pages of classified documents Trump allegedly brought with him when he left the White House. All presidential records are owned by the public and should be automatically transferred into the custody of the National Archives as soon as the president leaves office, per the Presidential Records Act of 1978. A lot of different points made down through here. Do you have any? I kind of like sprung this onto you. But do you have any opening thoughts that you want to mention before I go through some of these bullet points?
Well, the worldly thoughts is, I wonder, like this can't have a political bent at all. I mean, the FBI doesn't work under a political bent. I can't believe that this is like the Democrats telling the FBI what to do, because if they did, this will obviously rile and make Trump seem to be a persecuted, sympathetic figure again by those who are either on his side or still neutral. So just as we had talked about, the turning of Roe v. Wade was not going to help the Republicans because it made them look like bullies in a time when the election. This is not going to help the Democrats come election time unless it turns into criminal charges.
You were saying yesterday, not to like put words in your mouth, but you were saying to me yesterday, you thought for the Democrats it was incredibly important that something came of this.
It has
like
to.
If something does not come of this, this really, really hurts the Democrats' chances moving forward. A couple of like just not minor things, but just some things that I've noted before. I was reading a piece. There's a piece done on Vice that you can look up as well, and then they were actually talking about it on the All In podcast. Most presidents have taken stuff with them when they've left the White House. Now, how important those documents are, whether or not they're trying to hide something, I don't know, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and imply that like what Trump took was equal to whatever Obama or Bush or Clinton and all the way down the row, what they took with them. So that part of it is curious because I don't, like in my experience, I don't remember hearing about any of the stuff Obama took. I don't remember hearing anything about what Bush took. I don't remember. There are documents at other presidents' houses, from what I've read, that aren't supposed to be at other presidents' residencies. Like they are supposed to go into this National Archive. So how that all plays out will be interesting as well. Does there almost become like this backlash of like going through, I don't want to call it other presidencies trash, but like trying to dig up what else should go into the National Archives or not? To me, that would make it feel like less of a manhunt. And I'm not here to say it is or isn't a manhunt. I thought you actually did a very good job at the beginning implying like there's probably not as much political push this as people would like it to seem. It's probably the FBI just doing their investigation. But I do wonder if they'll fall back through some of the other presidencies and try to actually collect what's supposed to go into the National Archives.
It is an interesting point. I mean, one of the things I read was a former FBI guy that's just like, just imagine. They didn't just say, hey, what do you think? Okay, we'll give it a try. Like they realize the scrutiny they're going to be under. They realize he said this must have been planned for months to make sure legally they did everything absolutely right, that there was nothing of this was on a whim because they're going to fall under so much scrutiny just because of the people who now we've got to a point in time where everyone thinks everything's political. You know, if a doctor makes an announcement, it's political. If a lawyer makes an announcement, it's political. And it's absurd because most people don't really like politics. So, when we're talking about, the NBA playoffs or the kickoff of the college football season, there's no political bent to it. But every time, people talk about anything that involves, it's like if I say, hey, I ran into Derek Slaughter at McDonald's. Now all of a sudden people are going to think, oh my gosh, there's a political bent to it, because no, it's just he's a guy and I'm a guy and we ran into each other and we know each other. So there's not always a political connection. And because the FBI raided, they obviously think that there's something there. The question is there something there? And they took boxes. So there's stuff there, but is anything of consequence?
Yeah, I mean, I agree fully with what you said about not that they have to find something, because like if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But I do think to help themselves in the fall, there has to be something there. And if there isn't, I don't know. Because I mean, now you're gonna have people that support Trump that are listen, I'll be like, we kind of said at the beginning of the show, I don't necessarily 100% agree with how they went about it. I think there are some protocol things that are funky. I will also say Trump doesn't cooperate. Like he just doesn't with anything. And so it's this fine line for me being like a younger Republican of like, I don't enjoy the way they went about this. I don't think protocol was run. I also don't think Trump helps himself at all. I don't think he plays the game. I don't think he actually cooperates with the FBI when he could make this easier than what it is. How you want to feel about that, by all means, people can decide which side of the fence they want to jump off onto. I'm curious to see where it goes.
The fascinating thing for me for the Republican Party, not just in I'm curious to see where 2022 ends up, because again, it looked incredibly red, then Roe versus Wade, then who knows what other waves we take between now and then. But I never thought that in 2024 on the Republican side, there would be someone with enough gumption or whatever to, if Trump is like, I really want to run, and someone's like, I think I'm going to run against you, and have, a little meat to that bone. And DeSantis obviously has that. And
yes.
I didn't think that person would exist until after the next election, that the Republican Party would say, Donald, if you want to run, you run, and we'll step back.
No.
And I think DeSantis is like, I think I just might run anyway.
The 2024 is interesting because of what you just outlined with DeSantis. The other side's fascinating too because of the whole Newsom thing. I don't know if you've been keeping track of Newsom, and he's been at the White House. Like a couple of the things that I listened to, like on Vox and different podcasts, they essentially said like Newsom's all but like measuring the curtains at the White House. Truly believes that he will be the nominee and that he will be able to take over for Biden, and Biden will not be running in 2020.
Oh, I never thought Biden would run. When the night that he won, I didn't think Biden was running in 2024.
Yeah. So there are, like, depending on who you talk to or you listen to, there's not a lot of middle ground, but everyone that I trust has said you either are going to have Biden-Trump rematch or you're going to have Newsom DeSantis. That is what the experts that I trust are saying. And there's no middle, like there's no wiggle between it. Either both parties are going to say that's enough of that, and here's two new people, or the parties are going to shrink and they're going to say like, well, I guess we'll do it again. We'll run it back because like what else? We don't have the fortitude to not do it.
Maybe. I don't think the Democrats can run Biden again.
It'll be interesting.
I don't think they can. Even if he was 62 years old, it would be different. But when you combine what has happened, and obviously the Ukraine, that's not, there's things that happen. Like COVID happened on Trump's watch. I don't think he handled it great, and it really hurt him. And it was bad luck in the timing.
I thought the timing was horrific.
Yeah.
Because what's the irony is I thought the first 6 months his messaging was horrible. I thought the administration's. However, his ability to do warp speed and dump all the money into the vaccines probably put us ahead of the rest of the world. And so there's this weird gap where like 6 months until the election, devastating. 12 months, 18 months, I don't know if it would have been as devastating. Like, I think, and so timing is, you and I talk all the time. Timing is everything. I just heard, this is complete side note, and then we can go to Olivie Newton-John. Have you been keeping track of the Ukraine-Russia stuff at all?
A little, but
okay,
not nearly.
So I just found out, because it's kind of like, it hasn't died down. I think it's rude to say it's died down, because obviously people are still over there fighting for their lives. However, it certainly has subsided in the fighting day to day. It certainly has subsided in the news coverage. One of the reasons that has happened, and I never, like you talk about just like not thinking about things, apparently this is like the Ukraine wet season. Like this is when like it's wet, it's rainy, the weather doesn't cooperate. It's really rough. Most of Russia's brigade, like how they move forward, are tanks.
Okay.
So they can't veer off of paved roads, like off of the paths. That is going to change within the next month or two. The ground will freeze over, it will harden, and then it's essentially what I've read is that it's going to take off. Like the war is going to pick up, and then you're going to have, it's going to be NATO, it's going to be the US, it's going to be these nations deciding like what do we do, because it's going to notch up a level.
Okay.
So I think there's this false sense.
That's interesting.
It's super interesting that there's this false sense of like nothing too drastic is going to happen. But really, the only reason people feel that way is because
the monsoon season.
The ground hasn't frozen over. Frozen.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, no, I got you. So, Olivie Newton-John. This is gonna. I don't think this sounds rude, but probably a bigger deal for you than it is for me.
Oh my God, my feed.
Okay.
Well, this is what I saw someone posted on Facebook, and that is one of the world in my world. As I tell people, I get most of my news from Facebook. That's the first place I saw it. I walked out into the office. Because when we have news here, there's things that come across that sometimes are bigger deals to some of us than others. And I walked out and I said, Olivie Newton-John died. Is that big enough news for us? And I got a screech of like, oh my God, yes. And I looked and my feed was just person after person after person from this. And I know Grease is obviously her most famous role. She had hits. Other that, before that, after that. But she, for everyone that had met her or talked about her or anything, just said that she was like the nicest, superstar, and it just doesn't seem like. I know when someone passes, no one really. There's a grace period of criticism, but it just seems so incredibly genuine.
Well,
and
she just didn't look 73 either. She looks like younger. I would have said she was 50.
But I think not only is she like, it seems like universally beloved, which I kind of you knew, but you didn't really realize until yesterday. Is there anyone who doesn't like Grease?
I wanted to ask you this. I thought about this yesterday when you first told me. Do you, my age and younger, 50% of people have seen Grease? Higher or lower?
See, that's crazy because I would have maybe. I mean, you have.
I have, but I'm at the top of that age bracket.
They will now. I'll say that. I don't. It's interesting. I mean, all the theater kids have because high schools still do Grease and stuff like that. But just in general, do they know Go Grease Light? And I don't know. That's a good question.
I would be interested to know. You and I had this debate with not Mariah Carey. Who did we have Madonna? We had the debate about Madonna and like if she walked down the street, would your kids be able to recognize Madonna?
Well, if she walked down the street, I don't know if I'd be able to recognize her, but it's still.
I wonder. I think I would recognize her. I don't know how many people my age and below would recognize Olivie Newton-John.
Oh, I wouldn't have if she just walked down now, but if she was dressed up like Sandra Dee, I would. Did you ever hear this story? And I just Googled this. I should have.
John Travolta said, "My dearest Olivia, you made all of our lives so much better. Your impact was incredible. I love you so much. We will see you down the road, and we will all be together again. Yours from the first moment I saw you and forever. You're Danny. You're John. John Travolta to Olivia Newton-John."
There was a story, and I should have looked at this before.
Is that what you're trying to find?
No, I saw that one too. There were just so many. She had a husband or a guy she was dating. I know it was her, and I didn't look this up, and I should have. Who disappeared, and they announced him dead. Something I think they pretend he like faked his death, and then he surfaced somewhere. He was like a businessman who was bankrupt. I want to say this happened 25 years ago. Don't quote me on this 100%. Disappearance of Patrick McDonald. Off the coast of relationship with Olivie Newton-John. I thought they found him. John's ex, who faked his own death, found in Mexico. Yes.
Okay. Does it have a year?
It was has the mystery of John's ex-boyfriend who vanished without a trace 12 years ago during a fishing trip finally been solved. He was working as a cameraman. I don't know. But anyway, that's just a little Olivie Newton-John trivia that goes with it if you want to dig into it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Grease song?
I'll ask you a trivia question. How many times have you seen Grease? Know it, right?
Probably like a dozen times, but most of them were when I was younger. It was something as a kid.
Do you know which Grease song was nominated for whether it was a Grammy or a Tony? One of the songs off the soundtrack was nominated.
The song at the end.
Hopelessly Devoted.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. And what was do you know the Grammy? Was it soundtrack or
it must have been best sound. It must have been best movie. I would guess. And no matter if you are a thrash metal guy, if Pantera is your favorite band and you don't like Hopelessly Devoted, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It is such a belt it out as loud as you can.
Grease in general is just fun.
It's perfect.
As long as you don't go into it thinking you're going to watch this great serious musical, it is a ton of fun.
It is so much fun.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people watched it last night. I did not.
Yeah.
But I didn't really watch anything last night because I didn't have time.
Yeah.
I will watch it again real soon.
Okay.
Real soon.
Malcolm.
And I've never seen Grease 2.
You don't need to. Malcolm Gladwell slams working from home. Quote, "What have you reduced your life to?" Author Malcolm Gladwell thinks that remote work is hurting society and that a recession will likely drive employees who are sitting in their pajamas back into the office. He says that in order to regain a sense of belonging and to feel a part of something larger than themselves, Americans must go back to the office. It's very hard to feel necessary when you're so physically disconnected, said the Canadian writer. The last quote that I wanted to read to you, because I specifically highlighted it for you. As we face the battle that all organizations are facing now in getting people back into the office, it's really hard to explain this core physiological truth, which is we want you to have a feeling of belonging and to feel necessary. Part of that is being present.
Okay. In general, I agree what he says. Okay. And we have an advantage because we talked about this yesterday because we talked about it before the show. He implies that the only place people can get camaraderie and
connection.
Yeah, what word am I looking? Congregation is at work. And you can, for lots of people, the quality of work, working from home has increased the quality of family, has increased their quality of life. I can see why in aspects it makes you more of an isolationist, but just because your job has you working from home doesn't mean you can't be involved with groups other places.
I think the biggest to me, I feel bad for Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell has done stuff like this before. He's speaking from a place where for someone who's so connected to what's going on around him, he seems very disconnected to the average person's life. To me, this thought process sounds as if he's getting to do something he loves to do. He loves to research. He loves to talk to people. He loves to go spend a day with people and write about it and how it ties to this and bringing it all together. So for him, that connection in his life is, yes, walking outside the door and seeing what the world has to offer. There are a lot of people where their job is not that thing. It's the thing that they do after their job is the thing that connects them to the world the most and gives them the most joy. And so this idea that the physical presence of your work is the thing that matters the most, is what connects you the most, I just vehemently disagree with.
I agree. And there's the lost time. Like I've known two people now who have lived in New Jersey, worked in New York City, and who have been very, very financially successful, and who have talked about when they have young kids that they really, from Monday through Friday, either barely or didn't see their kids awake at all.
Yeah. Because
by the time they got home from work, the kids were already in bed. And so, I had a buddy who drove and then took a bus to a train into the city, and he had an hour and a half commute each way.
Yeah.
So there's 3 hours a day. There's 15 hours a week of just reading newspapers, scanning your phone, replying to email. It's just wasted time. And to say that that increases the quality of your life is just absurd.
He went on to say, and this was probably the quote that I don't want it to be taken out of context. However, he went on to say, if we don't feel like we're a part of something important, what's the point, he said. If it's just a paycheck, then it's like, what have you reduced your life to?
Well, again, as your point was, you can be involved in something really important that has nothing to do with a paycheck, or it has a very small paycheck. Right. Like you're coaching basketball, you get a paycheck.
Sure.
But the value of, you're not doing it for the paycheck.
Sure.
And how many volunteer organizations do people pour their heart and soul into because they think they're making the world a better place, and usually they are making the world a better place. Sure. And they get no paycheck. They actually lose money in the process.
Totally.
So yeah, I'm with you.
I think
he's off base.
This is the only other thing I would say too, is I think it's going to work. I think one of their biggest things, like San Francisco, an estimated 1/3, I looked up these stats because I was curious. In San Francisco, an estimated 1/3 of the city's workforce is remote. City officials said that remote work cost it $400 million in tax revenues last year. So what these cities are going to start to see, your San Francisco's, your New York's, they're going to see a huge decrease in tax money. They're going to see a huge decrease in the amount of money that's spent into their economy, like into their revenue stream. So I think they are desperate to have people. I think originally it was like this cute thing. I think now cities are like, oh, if this doesn't end now, we're in serious trouble.
Well, it's certainly going to change. But you think the result then becomes you have businesses that can't survive. So you have available real estate. And now you have available real estate that's way cheaper than it ever was. And so now do people then buy the cheap real estate and head back to the city because now they can afford it? I mean, this is the way the free market system works. It'll be interesting to see, because it's not like 30% of San Francisco's commercial space is going to sit empty and they're not going to lower prices. So then when they lower prices, do the rich guys just gobble it up more? Does the small guys see opportunities?
I think BlackRock buys it up, but that's a different conversation.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So it'll be interesting. So not often you get to disagree with Malcolm Gladwell, but I do disagree with him on this one. And I think work from home is here, whether people like it. This is the other misconception, because I was thinking about this, and then we can move on to Brittany Griner. I think for a lot of people, working from home implies you're still working for somebody. And it is unbelievable how older generations can't wrap their head around the idea that working remotely, like half these people working remotely are working for themselves. They're not working for someone.
I don't
like,
know,
there
half,
is no,
but there's...
Oh, it's half. Because
they're
selling, because they're doing their own branding. They're selling their own stuff. I mean, just you think of the people that are selling stuff just on like Amazon and Etsy and that stuff alone. Just that alone.
I just think of how much more, because there are lots of people who have desk jobs or whatever that aren't busy 8 hours a day. And that they spend time at their office killing time. And when you in the middle of the day can run an errand, can drop a kid off, can even just be like, hey, I'm done at 3. I've got all my stuff done that needs to be done today. So we can leave. We can go to Knoebels now. I don't have to sit and just guard my desk for 2 more hours.
You don't have to sit through Selinsgrove traffic at 5 o'clock.
You don't have to sit through.
You can go to Harrisburg for the evening.
Why would, if you're going to Knoebels, you wouldn't go anywhere near Selinsgrove?
I'm not talking about Knoebels. I'm just
saying
if you wanted to go to Harrisburg.
I used the example.
That's how you're going to win that argument?
Stick with my example.
That's how you're going to win that argument.
Before the show, I won every argument. It was sad.
It actually was. Brittany Griner. I wanted to talk about this yesterday. This is one of those things I don't understand. This has the Brittany Griner issue. People are propping it up for so many different rights issues and like, not standards isn't the word, but Brittany Griner has become a figurehead for a lot of things that I don't necessarily know that the issue represents it. So she was sentenced to 9 years, which is overwhelming. It's way more than the sentence she should have gotten for what she did. I've said before on the show, I'm pro bringing any American home if we can do it. How we're going to bring her home, and then the things that people are doing, like holding her up as like women's rights, pay equity, like all these different things, is absolutely ludicrous.
Oh, the pay equity between the WNBA and the NBA is ludicrous. There's nothing. Absolutely.
There was a huge, I should look it up while we're talking. There was a huge article in the LA Times recently, and it was all about how the whole Brittany Griner situation is because of the pay equity between the NBA and the WNBA. In the LA Times, like in one of the biggest papers, like in the country.
Technically, they're not wrong that Brittany Griner went to play in Russia, as she has for multiple years.
Yes.
Because they make more money playing. Not only, it's not that they don't make enough money here, because they make 6 figures.
Sure.
Like, what does Brittany Griner make with her American contract? Do any of them make $1 million?
Probably not. Not with just their contract alone, no.
But it's not like they couldn't survive. But they can go play. They can do what they love to do. They can go to Europe and make a lot more money.
Yes.
And that's what most of them do. But that's how the supply and demand, because there's just not that much demand for their, if you're, as we saw in Elvis, if you can just tour the US and make $1 gajillion and you don't have to tour the world, then what the heck? Did the Grateful Dead ever tour the world? They probably did. That's a bad example. But like Elvis didn't. And these,
no.
If you don't have to go around, people go around the world because they can make money. But if they don't want to and they don't have to, then they can stay here. So like,
I still go back to this idea of the WNBA first of all, it was subsidized by the NBA.
It still is.
Yes, to an extent. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like the NBA started this for women. Like
Correct.
they did not have to start the WNBA.
Correct.
I don't know if it was. I would be fascinated to ask.
See what I'm gonna have a sip of? This
Yeah,
could have been
good.
yours. How is yours, by the way?
Mine's good. I would be fascinated to ask, like David Stern and Adam Silver, who are the commissioners of the NBA. I would have been fascinated to ask them, like, did you really think it would make money, or was it just the right thing to do to try to start a women's league?
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked if they said it was 75. We felt it was the right thing to do, and there was maybe a shot in the dark that if things went well, maybe at some point we could generate a profit. I can't express this enough to people. The WNBA does not make money. It doesn't. It loses money.
No,
so the salaries and the things that these people are getting in the WNBA, I'm not saying they're handouts because they work hard and they put on a performance and they play it like they do the same thing. However, like the money is not coming from a profitable product. It doesn't.
No, I don't think. You just have to be 100% philosophical to say that it's not fair. But anyone that has any grasp of real world and economics and how things work, as we talked about Bruce Springsteen before you go on, like some bands can charge $15 a ticket and can't sell out, and some bands charge $5,000 tickets and they do sell out. And it's not. I mean, it's the entertainment value of supply and demand. If people really wanted to watch the NBA and there was a TV contract that mattered and ticket sales mattered, then it would be different, but they don't.
Okay. So that side, so let's set that aside then. I'm all for bringing Americans home. Brittney Griner, her value to our society, which we all would like to think we bring value to our society. Like, I don't know what you and I bring, but it would be nice to think that
we bring almost Emmy-nominated content.
That's right. We would like to think that there is some sort of value. The deal that we are about to make is going to be the most lopsided deal in the history of American politics. It's not even close as far as like, what's that?
It's not balanced.
It's not balanced is the politest thing that you can say about it. I don't know if you know, like, do you know anything about this Victor?
I know he's an arms dealer.
So he was an arms dealer during the 1990s. He actually was who the movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage.
Never saw it.
That's actually what the movie was based off of. Just to give you an idea, he is conflicts in Afghanistan, Angola, the Congo, Liberia, Rwanda, Sierra Leone. Small estimates say that he's probably responsible for over 100,000 Africans dying. He has supplied arms to both sides in multiple wars across the Middle East and in Africa. He's worked for the United States government before. The United States
government
old is he now? He's got to be up into he's got to be pushing 50 now, just given when he went in.
Oh, that's it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, this is not like some dude who's
a
like
kid.
Decrepit. I mean, this is like even in 2010, like the last known photos of him, like he's a 40-year-old male. Like he's like, you know, like a middle-aged adult.
I mean, the thing I take from the Brittney Griner thing is how dangerous it is to travel overseas. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I remember some kid shoplifting something. I don't want to throw a name in it because I think I know the country, but that they like, if you got arrested shoplifting, you got caned in public. And they're like, this is like some 18-year-old American college kid who was just dumb and stupid and they didn't know. And all these people as like, we were just talking here about a case of someone, and this may be a story that shows up somewhere sometime. A person who got arrested here for having a marijuana roach in their car, but the state they came from, it's legal, but it's not legal here. And we always look at that like there's a common sense decency of like, oh, it was legal there, it wasn't legal here. Like Brittney Griner wasn't dealing arms. Brittney Griner didn't really, and for all the,
but isn't that the point?
But the thing is, like, we travel all the time from state to state and don't know what the state laws are. Whenever we travel internationally, we don't know what the state laws are.
Would you do the trade? You're the president.
No.
Do the trade?
Well, I'd have to look more into it, but
I was trying to, and then you started.
But okay, and I'll get back to that. But my thought is like, if you were this, and like, how many people would just be like, well, I do it everywhere. I did it in this country. I did it in the U.S. I did this. I didn't know it was illegal here. And they're like, well, it is, and there's 9 years.
Yeah,
I mean, that should scare the crap out of people.
Totally. The sentencing is absurd. Traveling overseas, especially now, like, very scary. Like, those things are true, and I agree with you.
Okay.
Outside of that, this is being used as a pay equity issue, which is absurd.
Absurd.
It's being used as like they're propping it up like, oh, we would have gotten LeBron James back, but we didn't get Brittney Griner. So it's being used for like a women's rights cause, which in my opinion is absurd. Like, they're using
I don't know. That's not as absurd as
they're using it for all of these causes. And then and here's the crazy part. There's enough pressure now that we're about to make the most lopsided deal you could possibly make. I mean, this guy is a bona fide, one of the most dangerous people in the world. Now, I did read somewhere, there are people within our administration that believe it would be hard for him to do what he did then today because of technology because of, well, just the game has shifted. Like, the way money's moved around, the way all this stuff happens. When he was doing this stuff in the 90s and the 2000s, it was like this gray area of like he could float through the system. They don't think he's as dangerous as what he would have been. But I don't know if I agree with that.
And they can microchip him now. They can track him anywhere.
They can track him and follow him everywhere. So I don't know. I do
get your point. I get your point.
I hope Brittney Griner gets home. I do not hope it's for this deal. And I do not think she should come home because of a lot of the reasons that people are using. She should get to come home because she's an American who doesn't deserve 9 years for the crime that she committed. It's there, point blank, done. She shouldn't come home because it's a pay equity thing. She shouldn't come home because it's a women's right thing. It should she's an American and she shouldn't be in jail for 9 years. Boom, done, simple.
Well, nobody, like the Russians shouldn't be in jail for 9 years. It's absurd.
You think so? The arms dealer?
No. For doing what she did. Anyone who did what she did shouldn't be in jail for 9 years.
I agree with that.
They should be in jail for like 9 hours.
I agree with that. And I'm telling you right now, if they make this deal, nobody should travel to Russia because you are X with a dollar sign.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not even, if you thought it was dangerous to go before, if this is the deal we make now, forget about it. Don't even think about going over.
I agree.
So, all right, there you go. Got that off my chest.
I'm with you.
Anything else?
You did well. Yeah, you want to talk about how wonderful Bruce Springsteen is, or do we not want to talk?
We can talk about it. It doesn't bother me any.
No, you
act like it would bother me if we talked about it.
I just thought it was hypocritical. Listen, I'm shocked at the ticket prices too. Jerry came in and told us beforehand that he has sold out every arena everywhere that they've announced they were playing is sold out. Even with all the Ticketmaster bump up, the exorbitant costs of all that stuff. You were complaining about it, and I just find it incredibly hypocritical that someone from the right would complain about the free market system.
Correct.
Because that's what
But my complaint
you guys espouse.
But my complaint wasn't with the free market system. My complaint is that the product does not merit what it's getting on the free market. But that's my complaint.
But you can't determine to someone else what it merits.
I think people are chasing a memory or nostalgia. I don't think the price they're paying is actually worth the musical gift that they are getting.
But again, it goes to taste. It goes to age.
100%.
If you walk down the street and you saw a Star Wars lunchbox, how much is it worth to you?
10 cents.
Okay.
Yes.
To a lot of people,
it's
not even about resale.
Correct.
But to a lot of people, it's worth a lot of money.
Totally.
And every time it's sitting there and they walk past it on their mantle, it brings a smile to their face.
Then I just think the ticket shouldn't be referred to as like a concert ticket. It should just be like a nostalgia ticket. They should literally market it as a nostalgia ticket.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that. Mm-hmm. But still, like I said, I just saw Joan Jett.
And you said she was great.
3 weeks ago. She's got to be 65. And she sounded great.
Yep. I get it. I understand.
Like, they're going to sound good. Yes. I've seen Bruce a handful of times.
Yes.
I have never been like disappointed at all.
We also found out at the end of this argument that I was actually thinking it was Bon Jovi, who's vocally
challenged right now. And
So that was
in 2016, Bruce played 4 hours and 4 minutes or something like that in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. So at 66 years old,
yes.
we're not talking. I mean, he still brings it.
Yeah.
So it is. Yeah. Anyway, be that as it may.
Ryan McGotch says, "Hey Mark, how's the hammy?"
You know what's funny?
He's fine.
Did I tell you this?
He's fine.
Did I tell you this
He's
yesterday?
fine.
First of all, it doesn't hurt at all to walk.
He's fine.
But when I'm trying to jog across the street and beat traffic,
Yeah.
I'm quickly reminded that my jog has a top speed right now, and I'm kind of like,
Okay.
But no, like walking around. So I don't know what is, like, you were an athlete. What's the difference between a pull and a strain?
You're fine. A pull and a strain.
Yeah, like someone would
I
say
don't
they have
know
a
if
pulled
there
quad or
is.
they have a strained quad.
I
They're
don't
different, obviously.
Are they? I think
Maybe
it's-
not. I don't
maybe
know.
it's like TV and television. Like it's the same. I don't know.
Could be. I would think it'd be different.
Your favorite Tastes Like Good says, for real though, we would have gone and got LeBron back. Do you think?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
Do you think? Well, here's this. I said this too. I also don't think LeBron would have got 9 years. I think LeBron would have got like 20. I think they would have done whatever they had to do to keep LeBron there.
Just for political
I
purposes
think
and where
his
we stand.
sentencing.
Maybe.
I think his sentencing would have been harsher.
Maybe.
That's just my opinion. No.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who is the most famous white athlete in the world right now, and in America right now. And I don't want to go with Tom Brady because Tom Brady's a little polarizing. Although I think people like Tom Brady more now that he left New England.
So where were you going to go with
I'm
it?
trying to think of who would be a white athlete that white America would be up in arms. You know what I'm saying?
As opposed, like, are you just talking from like a fan standpoint, or?
I mean, if it was LeBron, there is that section of white America that just like wouldn't care because he's black.
Interesting. What if it was a NASCAR driver? I mean, there's subcultures that wouldn't have gave a crap if X would have been taken from the NASCAR circuit.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying to think of.
I will say this. For me personally, it is not about the fact that she's a woman or a male. It's not about the fact that she's black or white. It's not about what sport she plays.
But you're different because you see the world differently.
It's truly just the idea of like she's an American and she doesn't deserve 9 years. Anything outside of that are people trying to use her to strengthen their cause,
their own cause.
to show.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I don't know. Now I'm fixated on who is the most popular white athlete.
Did you ever watch Bill Burr? Because he does a really good 5-minute skit on this. Women have let the WNBA down. Women didn't buy tickets. Women didn't tune into games. Women didn't buy jerseys or merchandise. I think it's a very, very thoughtful point.
Well, when you think about it,
how many times have you seen a woman or girl wearing a WNBA jersey in your life?
Oh no, I get it. I think that I mean, I have talked to like not WNBA players, but women's basketball players who love watching Duke play Carolina.
Sure.
Who love if you're a fan of basketball, they love watching men's basketball.
I've told you before, I like women's basketball because it's executed. It's a different style of play. So if you like the sport, you really get past it pretty quickly, whether it's males or females.
But like the people who, the reason that most of these male sports, it's like men don't flock to gymnastics because most men didn't grow up doing gymnastics. But most of us played, baseball, football, basketball, soccer. Even if we weren't on a real team, we played soccer on the playground. We played wiffle ball. We played pickup basketball. We played whatever. We've played enough to appreciate the game and to like the game. So then we watch those at the highest level.
Yeah.
There are lots of girls who came through who didn't play this or, who.
Well, Bill Burr, like one of the points, and obviously he's trying to be funny, but it is very thought-provoking.
It's poignant.
One of the things that he said is he goes, you go to any of these NFL games on a Sunday and there's some chubby guy with his shirt off with like a big letter on his chest and he's freezing cold and he's screaming his heart out for these dudes that are on the field. And his whole argument was like, if you go to some of these women's soccer matches, you go to the WNBA games, stuff like that. He's like, there's nobody there with their jersey on. There's nobody, like, women aren't like filling up the stands like with like their, you know, their stomach painted and like die hard like cheering it on. So like I do think it's I think it's worth noting. I think it's definitely something that gets avoided in the conversation because no one wants to sound like a jerk. But I think it's a very fair point.
Well, I think there's also aspects, and not to dive into the psychology of women, but women are very competitive with each other, and I don't think now. Didn't more women vote for Trump than Hillary?
I'm not sure.
It's not like there's not just this blind support of women.
But do you think that's the struggle for these leagues, though?
I think it's part.
Really?
I think the women who don't play basketball don't care. I think, you know, you're just talking to a much smaller, like most men grew up either playing soccer or playing or whatever, at least to a degree enough to watch it and to appreciate it. And on the other side, it's different. But one of the things I was going to say, like they do study the fan base of the NFL is way more women than you would think.
No,
and I think there's a social aspect to it, and there's like a sex appeal aspect to it, because there are women that think Derek Jeter was the sexiest man alive or Tom Brady was the sexiest man alive, and it just doesn't portray to women's athletics per se. I mean, there are some exceptions. There's Serena Williams. There are some exceptions, but for the most part,
I think what you're implying becomes less and less true the further into the future we get. I think what you're saying, like in the 80s, 90s, there probably were less women that got to try to play basketball or got to try to play
correct
soccer. I think the point where we're at now in society, I mean, it's hard to find people that didn't play on like a little league softball team, ASO soccer, like church basketball. It's really hard to find girls that didn't do some type of
I still think it's way more boys than girls. Way more.
Really?
Yes.
You think the gap's that big?
I think
the gap is so big. I think
it's significant enough.
You think the gap is so big that a professional sports league cannot make it because that
when my son came through Montoursville Little League, he'll be 16 in a week. So when he was in minors, which is 7 and 8 years old, we had 9 minor league boy teams. Mm-hmm. They might have had 1 minor league softball team. Mm-hmm. It's just different.
Okay.
But also like and again, it just goes back to like, you know, sex appeal. Well, I'll just ask you this, and this seems so crude, but if you are going to watch 2-on-2 beach volleyball, would you rather watch men or women? You would rather watch women. You won't say it out loud, but that's the truth.
But I think it depends because, like, my cousin played high school volleyball because he went to a huge school, Emmaus, which is one of the biggest schools in the state. They had boys high school volleyball.
Okay.
And so his answer, he would actually say the men, they can do way more things than the women.
Of course, because they're taller and they jump higher.
I didn't play volleyball, so, like, sure. Like, for me, I don't really know. I'm, like, surface level watching this stuff. Same thing like with basketball. You would much rather watch the men, but for me, like, women's isn't that far off because of the intricacies.
Right. You were the wrong person to ask. Generally speaking, when the Olympics come around,
just because I don't give you the answer you want doesn't mean I'm the wrong person.
No, it was because you're the wrong person to ask. When the Olympics come around, most red-blooded American males would rather watch women's beach volleyball than men's beach volleyball.
Okay.
And I think for most red-blooded American women, they would rather watch guys play basketball than they would watch women play basketball.
But what for, like,
because of the pure sex appeal?
Yeah, but what about the sports that have neutral clothing, like curling or like bowling? Like, what about sports that don't? There is no idea of like women in bikinis or spandex. Like,
well, in basketball,
it's
still jerseys, but it's still like you still see. Like, it doesn't have to be a bikini, but like.
Do you think, like, let me ask you this. I'm trying to think.
While you're thinking, don't you think part of Danica Patrick's appeal was that she was attractive?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
If Danica Patrick was on an attractive scale of 1 to 10, if Danica Patrick was a 3, she wouldn't have had nearly the following. She was in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue.
Right. She wouldn't have been able to collect the sponsors and different things like that. I don't know if it would have dictated. I'm trying to think how to say this. In diehard NASCAR circles, I don't know if it changes people's opinions of her.
But she brought people into NASCAR that weren't diehard.
You're describing like the circle outside of the inner circle.
Correct. Like you are a basketball junkie. That's why when you're watching women's or men's or whatever, you're watching inbounds plays, you're watching how they defend this and you don't care. As long as it's good quality, you don't care because you're enthralled by it. But for the people who are just kind of looking at a lesser value, like I get why your cousin likes to watch men's volleyball because he's a volleyball aficionado. For those of us who aren't, you know, we'd rather watch Misty May, whatever the hell, Trainer, wasn't her name?
But it's okay. So everything that you said, I don't want to say that. Most of what you said, I agree with. But it still doesn't. Everything that you said doesn't explain or justify women not showing up to support women, especially in professional sports. That is the weird, like taboo. Don't mention it. Don't saying it. But that is the reality of like, if women want to support women, they would fill these stadiums up.
Well,
and they haven't.
Correct. Because they don't, it's not their interest level. It just,
but isn't supporting one of the other their interest level?
One of the other
like,
things
isn't
too.
That it, like if you're a real feminist, like if you're like these things are, this is what you tweet about every day, and these are the things you put on your Instagram story, and this is like, go buy a WNBA ticket.
But they support the things they want to support. They support, you know,
I think that's what I'm saying is I don't see the gap.
But it's not, they're not supporting their gender. There's still aspects. If you grew up in the theater, you go support the theater. If you grew up in the church, you go support the church. Okay. If you didn't grow up as a big basketball fan, you don't go. Here's one of the other things. I want to point this out real quick.
Hold on, because it's going to attach this and you'll understand. Okay. If you think about the WNBA, what are the things that people are most vocal about right now, like on their social media accounts? They're very vocal about racial issues. Okay. They're very supportive of LGBTQ. Okay. And they're very supportive of women's rights. Okay. Those are like the three biggest things. They're like of what people are standing up for on their social media accounts. Like if you go to
for those people who support it,
I understand. But if you go to social media, those are the ones that are the most active and vocal on their accounts by far. Obviously, people support like breast cancer research, but like that's like 24 hours and then it goes away, and then there's all the people defending all the rights they believe in.
For that section of society.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So here's what I'm saying to you. I cannot think of something that supports minorities, LGBTQ, and women's rights more than the people that are playing in the WNBA, and the stadiums are empty. So all that I am saying is all these people that act vocal and want to say all these things on social media, buy a ticket and go support them.
But you're not going to go support. It's like telling people to go support a concert of a rap group when you don't like rap, or country when you don't like, or go to the opera when you don't like. People aren't going to go support something that they don't like, and they don't. If they're not a basketball fan, they're not going to go support it, regardless of what comes out.
So are you implying then that the product is not good enough to survive?
I am.
It sounds like you just. I would be fascinated enough to survive.
I would be fascinated to see what they would really have to do to, what would be the break-even point? How much could they make? How much could they travel? Would they not be able to fly all over the country? Because they've tried women's professional baseball and women's professional softball and these things, they just don't work. I will say this to put in fairness. They've often tried football in the spring, the USFL and all that. Sure. Football only works in football season.
Sure.
The WNBA runs, I say nobody. Summer's not basketball season. Summer's vacation season, it's baseball season, it's golf season, it's NASCAR season.
It's so weird you say that, though, because it's the time of the least competition.
Disagree.
They have the least to compete against in the summertime. You can't go up against the NBA and the NFL. You're going to get demolished.
But the NFL is only on weekends, except for a Thursday.
It doesn't matter. People if it's a Wednesday night and I can watch NFL fantasy news, or I can watch the WNBA game in New York. I mean, people aren't watching it.
When you talk about competition, you're just talking about from the sports world.
I'm talking about from just viewer eyes.
Right. from the life world,
Mhm.
there is so much more to do in the summer. You're chasing your kids around. You're out till
So
this.
when
You're
should
out.
it be?
So I don't know.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong.
It should be the summer.
Don't get me wrong. I
competitions.
don't see how they could possibly logistically do it in the winter. I get it. But we see the same thing with March Madness with women all the time.
Mhm.
If they could run the March Madness women tournament sometime not when the men are running, it would get way more eyes. Just can't.
But this is where I disagree. I don't think it's that football doesn't work in the spring. It's that
it doesn't.
No. It's that you already have the best football being played all fall and winter. If you moved, okay, so this is what I'm saying. If they came out today and they said, hey, we're going to play college football in the spring because the weather's better and it makes more sense, it would work fine. They wouldn't lose a dime. Nothing would happen. It would be completely okay. So this is what I'm saying. I still think it comes down to the product and it not being good enough.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But there has never been a competitive league. And we just look at football because football is king. And football has tried it multiple times. And they can't do it out of season.
Pick
WNBA.
Pick any 4 months for the NFL, and they don't lose a dime. Put it wherever you want on the calendar. I think the calendar is a cop out for what's happening to the WNBA, because the things that are successful you could put anywhere on that calendar, and it wouldn't change anything.
I don't disagree with you, but it is a true statement that anything going out of season just has never worked.
Yes, that's fine. I agree.
But it's not the reason that the product fails, that it's in June. I'm with you.
Anything else before we go? Bogue says, pulled hamstring, you're not really walking without crutches or a pretty severe limp. But that doesn't tell us. So then what was the other one?
Strain.
So what's a strain? So what's a strained hamstring?
I mean, I guess
the sex appeal does matter, and that's not just sports. That's all entertainment. I don't care if sports, film, music, podcast, sex appeal gets views and clicks. That's for men and women.
I agree with that.
I agree with that too.
Well, that was my statement. So I like him. Who's that?
Was that your statement?
That was my statement. I think it was. I think pretty much.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. That's good. We didn't kill each other. That was good.
We did. I told Jerry, we argue and laugh at the same time. I've never had someone that I've had heated arguments with a smile on my face like you.
Me?
This is yes.
Yeah. I think it's because I know how I feel about you, and I don't think differently. Whether I already think you're dumb. It doesn't matter.
I was just gonna say because I know going in you're young and dumb, and you stole my joke.
Yeah.
Damn you.
I mean, you're old.
All right, now I'm mad. Now I'm coming over. Now we're Will Smith in it.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Joke stealer.